Is that a weapon? The alien's priceless reaction to her first human encounter. Zenera adjusted the molecular stabilizer on her wrist, watching as her blue-tinged skin rippled and transformed into the peachy tone of the indigenous species of this small blue planet. Her third eye, normally positioned prominently in the center of her forehead, shimmered and disappeared beneath an illusion of smooth skin. She checked her reflection in a nearby puddle, pleased with the authenticity of her disguise. Agent Zenera, confirmed successful deployment and camouflage activation. The mechanical voice of command buzzed through the neural implant behind her ear. Confirmed, she whispered, adjusting her Earth-appropriate attire, jeans and a simple t-shirt that felt oddly restrictive compared to the fluid garments of her homeworld. Commencing first contact observation mission. At 27 cycles old, Zenera was the youngest field agent ever selected for a solo Earth mission. The Vexaran High Council had spent decades observing humans from afar, but after a series of concerning developments in human technology, they decided it was time for more direct intelligence gathering. Zenera had studied Earth culture exhaustively, memorizing thousands of social protocols and language variations. She was prepared for anything. Or so she thought. Remember, Zenera, command continued, this is strictly observational. Engage with subjects only if necessary to maintain cover. Your primary target is in the vicinity, a typical specimen who works in an Earth nature preservation area. Zenera squared her shoulders. I will bring honor to the collective. She followed the coordinates on her wrist device to a location humans called Whispering Pines National Park, where her subject was reportedly employed as a ranger. According to her briefing, rangers were authority figures who protected territorial boundaries, warriors of a sort, though not the kind with plasma swords and neural disruptors like Vexaran guards. The autumn air was crisp as she walked along a dirt path, cataloging various flora and atmospheric particulates in her mental database. She paused at a wooden structure labeled Visitor Center, where her target was supposed to be stationed. Theo Matthews loved his job most days. At 32, he'd found his calling among the trees and wildlife of Whispering Pines, away from the chaos of city life. Today, however, had been a trial. 3 separate groups of hikers had gotten lost, a child had fed chocolate to a squirrel despite the numerous "Don't feed wildlife" signs, and someone had attempted to carve their initials into Old Herman, the park's oldest redwood. He was just finishing up the incident report when the visitor center door opened, and a woman he'd never seen before walked in. There was something unusual about her gait, as if she was consciously thinking about each step. Her dark hair was cut in a perfect bob, almost too perfect, and she wore an expression of intense concentration. "Welcome to Whispering Pines," he called out with his standard greeting, though his eyes lingered on her a bit longer than usual. "Can I help you find something today?" Zenera froze momentarily, analyzing the human's vocal patterns. His pheromone output suggested no immediate threat, though his heightened pupil dilation indicated interest or suspicion. "Greetings, Earth Guardian," she replied, having practiced human pleasantries extensively. "I am hiking. For recreational purposes. As humans do." Theo raised an eyebrow. An awkward tourist, he decided. He got those sometimes, people so used to urban environments that they seemed almost alien when venturing into nature. "First time at Whispering Pines?" he asked, reaching for a trail map from the stack behind the counter. That's when it happened. As Theo's hand moved toward his pocket, Zenera's highly trained combat instincts kicked in. Her enhanced vision detected movement beneath his outer garment, a distinct shape that could only be one thing according to her briefing materials. A weapon. Zenera let out a high-pitched warning screech, the standard Vexaran alert call, and dove behind a display of Earth wildlife pamphlets, knocking them to the floor. Hostile engagement. "The subject is armed," she hissed into her communicator. Theo jumped back, startled by the woman's sudden movement. "Whoa! Are you okay, ma'am?" Zenera peered cautiously over the edge of the information desk, her eyes fixed on Theo's right side. Do not attempt to deploy your concealed apparatus, human. I am skilled in 17 forms of neutralization techniques. Theo glanced down at himself, utterly confused. My, what? The cylindrical weapon partially visible in your lower body covering. Zenera pointed accusingly. Following her gaze, Theo burst into surprised laughter as understanding dawned. That's just my water bottle, he explained, slowly pulling out a metal canteen from his cargo pants pocket. See? Hydration, not annihilation. Zenera blinked rapidly, processing this information against her database of Earth objects. Water, containment unit? Yeah, you know, for drinking. Theo took a sip to demonstrate, still looking at her with a mixture of amusement and concern. Are you feeling all right? You seem a little jumpy. Command's voice buzzed urgently in her ear. Zenera, stabilize the situation. Your behavior is non-standard for human interaction. Taking a deep breath, Zenera attempted to salvage her cover. Yes. I am. I have anxiety. About bears. Are there bears here? I thought you were a bear. She winced internally at the absurdity of her explanation. In the visitor center? Theo asked skeptically, but then his expression softened. We do have black bears in the park, but they generally avoid humans. Nothing to worry about in here. Zenera nodded vigorously, adopting what she hoped was a relieved expression. Good. No bears. That is reassuring. I'm Theo, by the way. Theo Matthews. He extended his hand, another human custom Zenera had studied. She stepped forward and clasped his appendage with slightly too much pressure. I am Zay, she caught herself just in time, Xena. Xena Robinson. She'd selected the surname from a list of common Earth names. Well, Xena, since you're interested in hiking, let me show you some of our easier trails. Perfect for beginners or those who are a bit bear-anxious. As he spread a map on the counter, Zenera noticed another strange protrusion on his face. Directly in the center of his upper lip was a small, dark tuft of hair. According to her anatomical database, this was called a mustache, but its purpose was unclear. Was it a sensory organ? A sign of rank? A natural defense mechanism? Has something on my face caught your attention? Theo asked, noticing her stare. Zenera didn't realize how intensely she'd been studying him. Your facial follicle growth. Is it functional? Theo laughed again, running a finger over his mustache. Not particularly. Just haven't had time to shave this week. Ranger life gets busy. Zenera filed this information away, fascinated by the casual way humans discussed their biological processes. On Vexor, physical alterations were always purposeful, engineered for specific environmental adaptations or professional requirements. Now, Theo continued, pointing to various colored lines on the map, the Blue Jay Trail is nice and gentle, about 2 miles round trip with some beautiful lookout points. As he leaned forward, Zenera noticed yet another anomaly. The human's ears were oddly rounded, with no elongated sensitivity lobes like Vexorans had. How did they properly detect atmospheric vibrations with such primitive auditory equipment? Your hearing appendages, she blurted out before she could stop herself. They are so small. Theo touched his ear self-consciously. Thanks? I guess? They hear just fine though. Agent Zenera, Command interrupted through her implant, minimize commentary on human physiology. Your cover is at risk. Zenera realized she needed to redirect. I was complimenting. Human ears are aesthetically pleasing. Theo's cheeks colored slightly. Oh. Well, thank you. That's an unusual compliment. Is the coloration change in your facial tissue indicative of a health emergency? Zenera asked, genuinely concerned by the sudden rush of blood to his face. What? No, I'm just blushing because, Theo stopped, giving her a curious look. Are you not from around here? Zenera felt a rush of panic. I am from Canada. Very northern Canada. Different customs. It was the first Earth location that came to mind from her studies. Ah, that explains it, Theo nodded, though he didn't seem entirely convinced. Well, northern friend, would you like me to show you around a bit? My shift ends in 15 minutes, and I was planning to hike the Osprey Loop anyway. It's beautiful this time of year. Zenera quickly calculated the strategic advantages. This would provide extended observation time with a typical human specimen, in their natural environment, engaged in characteristic activities. Yes, that would be informative. Great. Just let me finish up some paperwork. Feel free to look around. As Theo returned to his desk, Zenera took the opportunity to examine the visitor center. She was particularly intrigued by a three-dimensional model of the park in the center of the room. As she leaned closer to examine the miniature trees, she suddenly sneezed, an involuntary reaction to Earth's pollen content that her filters hadn't quite adjusted for. The force of the sneeze momentarily disrupted her molecular stabilizer, causing her normally blue left hand to flicker briefly into view before the camouflage reasserted itself. She glanced up in alarm to see if Theo had noticed, but he was focused on his computer screen, typing rapidly. Agent status critical, she whispered to command. Camouflage instability detected. Acknowledged, came the response. Temporary fluctuation due to atmospheric adaptation. Should stabilize within 1 Earth hour. Continue mission but minimize physical exertion. When Theo finished his work and gathered his backpack, Zenera had composed herself once more. They headed out onto the trail together, the human walking with casual confidence while the disguised alien carefully catalogued every detail of their interaction. So, Xena from northern Canada, Theo said as they climbed a gentle slope, what brings you to our little corner of the woods? Research, she answered honestly. I am studying human behavior in natural settings. Anthropology student? Yes. Exactly that. Zenera was relieved at the convenient cover story. Well, you picked a good day. The light through the trees this time of year is something special. As they reached a clearing, sunlight filtered through the autumn leaves, creating patterns of gold and amber on the forest floor. Zenera stopped, genuinely awed by the sight. On Vexor, the dual suns created a perpetually blue-tinted landscape, nothing like this warm spectrum of colors. It is beautiful, she said, forgetting for a moment that she was on a mission. Theo smiled at her reaction. Nothing like this in northern Canada? Not exactly like this, no. They continued walking, and gradually, Zenera found herself relaxing into the rhythm of human conversation. Theo pointed out various plants and animals, explaining their ecological roles with obvious passion. She asked questions, careful ones that wouldn't reveal her alien knowledge but would satisfy her curiosity about Earth's biodiversity. When they reached a vista overlooking a valley of trees painted in red and gold, they paused to rest on a fallen log. Theo pulled out his water bottle again, the object she'd mistaken for a weapon, and offered her a drink. No thank you, she said. I am adequately hydrated at present. Theo chuckled. You have an interesting way of speaking, you know that? Is my communication ineffective? Zenera asked, concerned that her language module might be malfunctioning. No, not ineffective. Just very precise. It's actually refreshing compared to how most people talk these days. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, Zenera realized with some surprise that she was enjoying herself. This wasn't just a reconnaissance mission anymore, she was genuinely fascinated by this human and his world. We should head back before it gets dark, Theo suggested, standing and brushing off his pants. As they walked back toward the visitor center, a thought occurred to Zenera. Perhaps her mission wouldn't be as straightforward as she'd anticipated. Perhaps understanding humans would require more than observation from a distance. It would require connection. The trail narrowed, and as Theo stepped aside to let her pass, their hands accidentally brushed. Another jolt to her molecular stabilizer caused her fingers to momentarily shimmer with their natural blue luminescence. Theo blinked. "Did you just?" "Your hand looked like it glowed for a second." Zanara's hearts, all three of them, seemed to stop. "Trick of the light," she said quickly. "The setting sun through the trees creates many optical illusions." Theo stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Yeah, must be." But there was a new curiosity in his eyes as they made their way back in the gathering dusk. At the parking lot, they prepared to part ways. "Will I see you around the park again?" Theo asked. Zanara knew she should say no. Command would likely reassign her after today's near exposures. But something compelled her to nod. "Yes. I believe you will." As she walked away, activating her cloaking shield once out of sight, Zanara transmitted her daily report to the Vexaran ship orbiting Earth. First contact established. Subject displays no immediate threat characteristics. Continuing observation recommended. What she didn't include in her official report was how the encounter had affected her personally, how this simple human with his water bottle, his mustache, and his passion for Earth's forests had begun to shift something fundamental in her understanding of the species she'd been sent to study. The mission was just beginning, and already Zanara knew nothing would be quite as she expected. Absolutely not. Zanara paced the confined space of her cloaked observation pod, her natural blue skin flickering with agitation patterns. The mission parameters clearly stated minimal interaction. Yesterday's encounter already exceeded protocols. The holographic projection of Commander JYX remained impassive, six-fingered hands clasped behind his back. "Your concerns are noted, Agent Zanara, but the High Council has reviewed your initial data and made their decision. This human, Theo Matthews, represents an ideal study subject. His isolated workplace, limited social circle, and natural affinity for you make him the perfect window into human society." "Affinity?" Zanara sputtered, her third eye blinking rapidly in distress. "He suspects something. Did you miss the part where my molecular stabilizer malfunctioned?" He rationalized it away, as humans typically do when confronted with phenomena outside their understanding, JYX replied calmly. "Additionally, our intelligence indicates that the human settlement near your location is hosting a traditional gathering today, something called a harvest festival. This presents an optimal opportunity to observe multiple human social rituals simultaneously." Zanara's shoulders slumped in defeat. "And I suppose I'll be ordered to attend with the ranger human?" "Precisely." JYX's hologram smiled, revealing the iridescent teeth characteristic of their species. "Consider it a promotion, Agent. Few Vexarans ever experience such immersive field research." After the transmission ended, Zanara reluctantly reactivated her human disguise. The transformation rippled across her form, three hearts compressing uncomfortably into the space where humans kept only one, her flexible skeletal structure solidifying into the rigid frame humans called a skeleton, the vibrant blue of her skin fading to a dull peach tone. "Primitive bodies," she muttered, adjusting the jeans and flannel shirt she'd replicated based on local fashion data. "How do they manage with only two eyes and such limited sensory input?" Her communicator, disguised as an Earth device called a smartphone, chimed with an incoming message. It was from Theo, suggesting they meet at the festival entrance at noon. Apparently, he'd taken her research claims seriously and wanted to show her authentic small-town human culture. Zanara took a deep breath of oxygen-rich air, still uncomfortable with the inefficient respiratory system her disguise required. For Vexar and science, she reminded herself, the traditional phrase of their research core. The Pinewood Valley Harvest Festival occupied the town square, a clash of colors, sounds, and smells that immediately overwhelmed Zenara's senses even through her dampened human receptors. Humans of all ages moved in chaotic patterns among wooden structures, booths, her database supplied, offering various goods and experiences. She spotted Theo waiting by a decorative archway made of dried vegetation. He wore casual attire, jeans similar to hers but a green shirt that her analysis indicated highlighted the color of his eyes. An interesting choice, perhaps humans selected garments to emphasize their genetic advantages? Xena. He waved enthusiastically when he spotted her. You made it. I wasn't sure you'd take me up on the offer. I would not miss this research opportunity, she responded, trying to inject the appropriate enthusiasm into her voice. So many humans gathered for ritualistic purposes. Theo laughed. I wouldn't call bobbing for apples and eating funnel cake ritualistic, but I guess anthropologists see things differently. Yes. Anthropology. My field of study. Zenara nodded seriously. Please proceed with the typical festival activities. Well, since you're the visitor, I thought I'd give you the full experience. He gestured expansively at the festival grounds. Food, games, crafts, local music, the whole small-town America package. As they walked among the booths, Zenara discreetly recorded everything through her optical implants, particularly fascinated by the inefficient but apparently enjoyable methods humans use to prepare and consume nutrients. Would you like to try a caramel apple? Theo asked, pointing to a booth where an older human female was coating spherical fruits with a sticky brown substance. This is traditional festival sustenance? Zenara asked cautiously. It's definitely a fall classic. After watching Theo purchase 2 of the items, Zenara hesitantly accepted one. Her research had confirmed that most Earth foods were compatible with Vexaran biology, though her digestive system would need to work overtime to process the unfamiliar compounds. She observed Theo's technique and attempted to replicate it, biting through the sticky outer layer into the fruit beneath. The explosion of sweetness and tartness on her taste receptors was startling. Vexaran cuisine tended toward the savory and umami spectrum. This is. She searched for an appropriate human expression, extraordinary. Theo smiled, clearly pleased by her reaction. Wait until you try the funnel cake. As they progressed through the festival, Zenara found herself genuinely enjoying certain aspects of the experience. The musical performances, while primitive compared to Vexaran harmonic orbs, had an emotional rawness that she found compelling. The various games of skill and chance seemed pointless yet strangely satisfying when Theo helped her win a small plush representation of an earth animal called a penguin. A trophy of our victory, she declared solemnly, holding the stuffed toy with dignity. Or just a cute souvenir, Theo suggested with another of his frequent smiles. The afternoon proceeded without incident until they approached a structure with a sign proclaiming, "Kissing Booth, $1, all proceeds to Pinewood Valley Fire Department." Zenara stopped abruptly. Explain this ritual, she demanded, her cultural database supplying concerningly incomplete information about this particular human custom. Theo looked slightly embarrassed. It's just a fundraiser. People pay $1 for a kiss from whoever's working the booth. It's all just for fun. Kiss. The pressing together of oral orifices? Zenara clarified, remembering the concept from her studies of human mating behaviors. Well, usually just a peck on the cheek at these things, but yeah, Theo's face displayed the puzzling reddening she'd noted during their first meeting. It's not really an anthropological highlight, though. Shall we move on to the pie contest? Zenara was about to agree when she noticed a young human female with flowing red hair staffing the booth glance their way and wave enthusiastically at Theo. Theodore Matthews, the woman called. Don't you dare walk past without saying hello to your old friend. Theo's facial temperature increased notably as they approached the booth. Xena, this is Lindsay Harrington. We went to high school together. Lindsay, this is Xena Robinson, an anthropologist studying human behavior in natural settings. An anthropologist. Lindsay's eyes widened with interest. How fascinating. And what have you learned about our little town so far? Human social bonding appears complex yet paradoxically simplistic, Zenera replied automatically. For instance, this ritual of exchanging currency for brief oral contact suggests. She's from Canada, Theo interrupted quickly. Very academic approach to everything. Lindsay laughed. Well, Professor, would you like to observe the kissing booth ritual up close? Theo knows the drill. She winked in a way that Zenera's databanks classified as flirtatious. Before Zenera could process what was happening, Theo had placed a small paper currency on the counter, and Lindsay had leaned forward to press her lips briefly against his cheek. Your turn, Xena, Lindsay said cheerfully. $1 for the firefighters? Zenera froze. Her mission parameters included minimal physical contact to reduce the risk of detection. The molecular stabilizer was still occasionally glitching after yesterday's incidents. Yet refusing would seem suspicious. I will participate, she declared, placing down currency from her supply of Earth money. As Lindsay leaned toward her, Zenera turned her head slightly, offering her cheek as Theo had done. The brief contact was unremarkable, yet Zenera noticed Theo watching with an expression she couldn't quite categorize. Thank you for your contribution to municipal safety, she told Lindsay formally, then turned to Theo. Shall we proceed to the PI assessment activity? As they walked away, Theo chuckled. You really do have a unique way of looking at things, don't you? Is my perspective incorrect? Zenera asked, genuinely curious. Not incorrect. Just different. Refreshing, actually. He glanced at her with that same unidentifiable expression. Most people don't see past the surface of things. The pie judging contest proved to be another sensory adventure, with Zenera sampling various baked fruit concoctions. She found herself particularly drawn to something called blackberry crumble, the tart fruit balanced with sweet, crunchy topping in a way that reminded her vaguely of celebratory desserts from her home world. You've got a little. Theo gestured to the corner of her mouth, and before she could react, he reached out and gently wiped away a crumb with his thumb. The unexpected contact sent a surge through her molecular stabilizer. Zenera felt the telltale ripple of her disguise wavering and quickly stepped back, turning her face away. I require a restroom break, she announced abruptly. Oh, sure. They're over by the community center, Theo pointed. Want me to wait here? Yes. Please remain stationary. I will return shortly. She hurried away, feeling her third eye threatening to materialize as the stabilizer struggled to maintain her human appearance. In the privacy of a locked stall in the human waste disposal facility, Zenera pressed the reset button on her wrist device, grimacing as the molecular field recalibrated with an uncomfortable tingling sensation. Command, we have another stabilizer fluctuation, she whispered. This disguise system is clearly defective. After a moment of silence, Commander HFY responded. Our engineers suggest that it may be responding to your emotional state rather than malfunctioning. Are you experiencing heightened emotional responses to the subject? Absurd, Zenera snapped, though she couldn't entirely dismiss the possibility. Vexaran physiology was intrinsically linked to emotional states, their natural skin luminescence intensified with strong feelings. Could those same responses be interfering with the stabilizer? I am a professional, she insisted. Any apparent emotional response is merely a reflection of my commitment to thorough research. Of course, HFY replied, in a tone that suggested he wasn't convinced. Proceed with caution, Agent. When Zenera returned to the festival grounds, she spotted Theo exactly where she'd left him, though he was now conversing with an older human male wearing what her database identified as religious attire, a clerical collar. Xena. Theo waved her over. This is Pastor Williams. He was just asking about the Northern Lights research project you mentioned yesterday. Zenera felt her heart stutter. She had mentioned no such research. Yes, fascinating work, the pastor said warmly. Theo tells me you're studying atmospheric phenomena in the Arctic Circle. I've always wanted to see the aurora borealis. Zenera shot Theo a questioning look, and he gave a tiny nod, as if prompting her to play along. It is impressive, she managed. The interaction of solar particles with Earth's magnetic field creates unique visual displays. She's being modest, Theo added smoothly. Zena's team is doing groundbreaking work on predicting auroral patterns. The pastor nodded appreciatively. Science revealing the wonders of creation. Beautiful thing. He checked his watch. I should get back, judging the pumpkin carving contest in 10 minutes. Lovely meeting you, Dr. Robinson. When he had gone, Zenera turned to Theo with narrowed eyes. Why did you fabricate research about lights? Theo looked slightly embarrassed. Sorry about that. Pastor Williams is big on community outreach, especially to visitors. If I'd said you were studying human behavior, he'd have invited you to observe 6 different church committees by now. You lied to protect me from excessive social obligations? Zenera was confused but oddly touched by this consideration. Just saving you from 3-hour meetings about bake sale strategies, Theo grinned. Consider it my contribution to science. As afternoon faded into evening, lanterns were lit throughout the festival grounds, creating pools of golden light in the gathering dusk. A band began setting up on a small stage, and humans started clearing an area in front of it. They're preparing for dancing, Theo explained. Traditional folk dances, mostly. Nothing fancy. Zenera watched with growing alarm as humans began coupling up in the designated area. Is participation mandatory? Not at all, Theo assured her. We can just watch if you prefer. The music began, string instruments and percussion creating rhythmic patterns that Zenera found mathematically interesting, if primitive. Humans moved in coordinated patterns, sometimes in circles, sometimes in lines, their movements synchronized yet individual. It's called contra-dancing, Theo explained. Colonial American tradition. The caller, that guy with the microphone, tells everyone what to do next. It appears enjoyable, Zenera admitted, watching the laughing humans switch partners and twirl in time to the music. Want to try? Theo asked hesitantly. It's pretty easy to pick up, and they're doing beginner dances right now. Zenera was about to refuse when she remembered Commander JYX's emphasis on immersive research. For scientific purposes, yes. Theo led her to the edge of the dance area just as the caller announced a new dance. Just follow my lead and listen to the instructions, he whispered. What followed was a blur of movement, music, and confusion. Zenera found her analytical mind struggling to process the seemingly contradictory instructions: swing your partner, do as I do, Alamand left. Her superior Vexaran coordination should have made the dance simple, but the human customs embedded in the movements were foreign to her muscle memory. Right hand star, the caller announced, and suddenly Zenera found herself in the center of 4 humans, all reaching toward each other with their right hands. As their hands touched in the center, a particularly energetic dancer gripped Zenera's hand tightly, and her molecular stabilizer chose that precise moment to glitch again. A ripple of blue luminescence spread from her fingers up her arm, visible to everyone in the circle before flickering back to human coloration. Whoa, one dancer exclaimed. Cool gloves. Are those LED lights? Zenera froze, but Theo smoothly interjected, latest tech from Canada. Reactive fiber optics. Expensive stuff. The dance moved on, but Zenera could feel Theo's eyes on her. When the music paused between songs, he gently guided her away from the dance area to a quiet corner behind a cider booth. Zena, he said softly, I think we should talk about the glowing blue thing that keeps happening. Zenera's training kicked in. As I explained previously, it's merely not a trick of the light, Theo interrupted firmly. I saw it yesterday, and now again today. And that's not all, you talk like you're translating from another language, you were surprised by a mustache, you called my ears, hearing appendages, and you look at everyday things like caramel apples like they're scientific specimens. Zenera felt her cover crumbling but tried one last deflection. My research methodology requires a fresh perspective on on familiar cultural elements. Theo's expression was gentle but determined. Xena, if that's even your name, I'm not angry. I'm just curious. Who are you, really? Before she could formulate a response, screams erupted from the other side of the festival grounds. Through the crowd, Zenera could see flames rising from one of the wooden booths, spreading quickly to the decorative hay bales nearby. Fire, someone shouted. Call 911. People began rushing away from the flames, creating a chaotic exodus. Zenera noticed a small human child who had fallen in the confusion, directly in the path of the panicking crowd. Without thinking, she activated her Vexaran physical enhancements, a forbidden action while in disguise, and moved with superhuman speed to scoop up the child before the crowd could trample her. The surge of energy completely overwhelmed her molecular stabilizer. In front of dozens of festival goers, including an open-mouthed Theo, Zenera's disguise dissolved entirely. Her blue skin glowed with stress patterns, her third eye opened fully on her forehead, and her actual form, taller, more angular, unmistakably non-human, was revealed. The child in her arms stared up with wide eyes but showed no fear, only wonder. Are you a superhero? She whispered. Zenera set the child down safely to the side and turned to face the shocked crowd. Her cover was blown, her mission a failure. She expected panic, screaming, perhaps even violence. Instead, a firefighter pushed through the crowd and shouted, "Whatever you are, can you help? The water main's broken and our pumper truck is blocked in." Zenera hesitated only briefly before reaching for the atmospheric manipulator on her belt, another forbidden technology. With a few quick adjustments, she aimed the device at the clouds overhead and activated it. The sky darkened instantly, clouds swirling unnaturally. Rain began to fall, precisely, only over the burning area, with uncanny intensity. Within moments, the flames were extinguished, leaving steaming, soggy debris. Silence fell over the festival grounds as all eyes turned to the blue-skinned alien in their midst. "You're not from northern Canada, are you?" Theo finally asked, breaking the tension. "No," Zenera admitted. "I am from considerably farther away than Canada." To her surprise, Theo stepped forward, placing himself between her and the still shocked crowd. "Everyone stay calm," he called out. "She just saved Lily Jenkins from being trampled and put out the fire. Whatever else she is, she's not a threat." "Actually," came a new voice, and Zenera turned to see Commander HFY striding through the crowd, no longer in hologram form but physically present and not bothering with a human disguise. His commanding Vexaran presence, with luminescent crest fully displayed, caused several humans to gasp. "Actually," he repeated, "this was not how first contact was supposed to occur." "Commander." Zenera saluted automatically. "I can explain." JYX held up a six-fingered hand. "The High Council will determine the appropriate response to this cultural exchange incident." He surveyed the crowd of humans with his triple gaze. "However, I note that Agent Zenera's actions were taken to preserve human life, which aligns with our prime directive." "Agent?" Theo looked at Zenera with new understanding. "You're some kind of alien spy?" "Observer," she corrected. "We have been studying Earth for decades from a distance. I was sent to gather more detailed cultural information."